For section 1-2, we're going to be looking at operations with rational numbers, or in layman's term, fractions. How do we perform basic number operations on rational numbers is our essential question for today. So the first thing that we're going to look at is adding and subtracting rationals. When you're adding and subtracting fractions, the first thing you want to do is make sure they have a common denominator. Once you get that common denominator and rewrite equivalent fractions, you add and subtract the numerator, carry over the denominator, and then of course reduce. We're going to look at two separate problems. The first problem that I want you to look at is a positive 9/10 minus a negative 4/3. First thing I notice is I have two minuses. I've got minus and negative. That's actually going to become a plus. The second thing that I notice is I need a common denominator. So when I'm looking between a 10 and a 3, the common denominator that I see happens to be 30. So what I'm going to want to do is rewrite two equivalent fractions, both with a 30 in the denominator. Now to go from a 10 to a 30, I had to multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply that 3 on top as well to get me a 27. Over here, to go from a 3 to a 30, I had to multiply by 10, leaving me a 40 in the numerator. So 27 30ths plus 40 30ths is 67 30ths. You're more than welcome to write that 2 and 7 30ths if you would like. However, do not, under any circumstances, give me a decimal. Let's go ahead and look at a second problem. And I'm going to make this one a little bit more complicated. Let's do negative 1 and 1/4 minus 2/3 plus 1/6. So not only have I thrown in order of operations, but we've got a mixed number as well. So let's start and let's look at this mixed number. I need to make him improper so I can add and subtract him with these other guys. The way that we make him improper is you take the integer negative 1, you take that 1 times the 4, 1 times 4 is 4, and then you add whatever's on the numerator. So 1 times 4 is 4, 4 plus 1 is 5. So my new numerator is 5. This 4 carries over as my denominator, leaving me negative 5/4. Now, the next thing I want to do in this case is find a common denominator. And since eventually I'm going to simplify all three of these into one, I'm going to go ahead and find a common denominator between all three of them. So between a 4, a 3, and a 6, I notice that they can all be a 12. Now, since that can be a 12, what I'm going to want to do is replace my numerators. So 4 to a 12, I take it times 3. So that means I'm going to take it times 3 on the top, giving me 15/12. 3 times 4 is going to get me a 12. So I'm going to multiply 4 on top, giving me 8/12. And 6 times 2, so I'm going to multiply the 2 on top, giving me 2/12. Now, order of operations dictates that we need to do anything in grouping symbols first. So my grouping symbol is going to be this set of parentheses right here. So I'm going to take these in parentheses, and I'm going to put those together first. Negative 15 minus 8 is negative 23/12. Now I'm going to add it to the 2/12, getting me negative 21/12. Now, negative 21/12 actually can be reduced. You'll notice that they're both divisible by 3, giving me negative 7/4. Now, you are more than welcome to write that negative 1 3/4 if you would like, or you can keep it negative 7/4. But once again, do not, under any circumstances, give me a decimal until I tell you that it's okay. All right, let's go ahead and look at how to multiply fractions or multiplying rationals. So when you multiply fractions, you multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. It's that simple, and you reduce. You just multiply straight across. Let's go ahead. We're just going to look at one example on this one. I want you to take negative 10 times a negative 1/5. Well, I noticed two things. First of all, I noticed that I've got a negative times a negative. I also noticed that negative 10 is written as an integer, not as a rational. So I'm going to rewrite the 10 as negative 10 over 1. We want rational times rational. I'm also going to make a mental note that negative times negative is always a positive. So I know right away my answer is going to be a positive. That being said, or that being finished, let's just go ahead and look at our numbers. 10 times 1 is 10. 1 times 5 is 5. And your answer is 10/5. Now that can be reduced. A 10 and a 5 are both divisible by 5. And since they're both divisible by 5, you go ahead and divide them. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 2 over 1 can be simplified to a 2. Last but not least, we're going to look at dividing rationals. Dividing rationals is simple because there's one additional step and then you just follow your multiplication rules, which we just reviewed. So the first thing you need to do is find the reciprocal of the second fraction. In other words, you need to take the second rational and flip it. And then you just follow your multiplication rules like before. Let me show you an example. Let's say I've got negative 10/17 divided by negative 12/5. When you're dividing, the first thing that you want to do is find the reciprocal of the second fraction always. The minute that you find the reciprocal of the second fraction, in this case 5/12, you change your division sign to a multiplication sign. From here you follow your multiplication rules exactly like we did on the last slide. And multiplication rules say numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. Negative 10 times negative 5 is positive 50. 17 times 12 happens to be positive 204. Now once again, these are both divisible by 2. I can actually divide both of those by 2. In other words, I can cancel that common factor. 50 divided by 2 is 25. 204 divided by 2 is 102. And at this point, there are no more common factors to divide them by. 25 over 102 is your final answer.